It is the night of the 20th of November, 1963, a little after 2 in the morning, and my sister Rebecca is sitting on the edge of my bed in the dark. I know it is her by the weight. 19 years we shared that room, 2 beds, 1 window, 1 nail on the wall for our aprons. You learn a person's weight the way you learn their voice. Downstairs, the benches are already in the house. The tables are up on sawhorses. My mother has been trimming celery for 3 days, because in our community, celery is not a vegetable. It is an announcement. Every stalk in that wash tub meant a wedding. The whole house smelled like celery and wet earth and lamp oil, and it would smell like that for a week after. Rebecca's wedding was in 31 hours. She did not light a lamp. She sat there so long I thought she might have fallen asleep sitting up. And then she said it very quietly in Deutsch, "Anna, come with me." And I did not answer her. I kept my eyes closed. I kept my breathing slow and even, the way a sleeping person breathes, because I was 19 years old and I was frightened, and I did not have one single word in my head for what was happening in my own bedroom. She sat a while longer. Then she put her hand flat on my back, just for a moment, the way you settle a nervous horse. And she went down the stairs, and she did not make the third one creak, which meant she had thought about it beforehand. That was the last time I was in a room with my sister for 52 years. Before I tell you what happened the next morning, and what happened half a century after that when I was 71 and standing on a porch in Maryland with a quilt in my arms, let me tell you who I am. My name is Anna. I am 82 years old. I was born in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I was Old Order Amish for 73 years of my life. This is Hannah the Amish Girl, the channel where the things we were never permitted to say out loud finally get said, and today the story is mine. If you want to hear the truth about our world from someone who actually lived inside it, please subscribe and tap the like button, and tell me one thing in the comments. Was there ever a name your family stopped saying? Just the answer, yes or no. I read every single one. Now, before I can tell you about that night, you have to understand 3 rules. None of them were written down anywhere. Not in the Ordnung, not in Scripture, not in any book you could hold in your hand. And every one of us knew them the way you know how to walk. The first rule: what is published in church cannot be unpublished. When a couple intends to marry, it is announced before the congregation. Published, we said. Once your name has been spoken in that room, in front of those people, the thing is no longer yours. It belongs to the church. There was no word in our language for changing your mind afterward, not because we were forbidden to, because nobody had ever needed one. The second rule: the one who leaves is not named. She is not mourned out loud. Her name does not come up at the table. She is not in the letters that go out to the aunts in Ohio. The word Meidung, shunning, sounds like a punishment somebody hands you. It was not like that. It was quieter and far more complete. It was a person becoming a subject nobody raised. The third rule, and this is the one that took me 60 years to be able to say: grief without a body has no ceremony. When my father died, 300 people came. They dug the grave themselves. They sang for 2 hours. There was food for 2 days, and a place for me to stand and be seen standing there. When Rebecca went, there was nothing, no funeral, because she was not dead. No wedding, because she was not there. No word for what she was. And so there was no place for me to put what I was carrying, and I carried it in my apron pocket for 52 years. There is no word in Dutch for a sister who is neither dead nor living in your world. I have looked. I asked a bishop once in 1971, in the plainest way I could manage, what a person is supposed to do with a grief that has no funeral. He was a kind man. He thought about it for a while, and he said, "Anna, we leave it with the Lord." And I said, yes. And I have thought since that leaving a thing with the Lord and never speaking of it again are two different things, though we only ever had the one sentence for both. That is the system. Now here is the morning. I woke at 4, the way I always did, and I knew before my feet touched the floor, because the other bed was made. Rebecca never made her bed before milking, not once in her life. I went downstairs. My mother was at the stove. My father was already in his good coat, and I stood in that kitchen with the table set for 300 people, and I said, "Rebecca is not upstairs." My mother did not turn around. She said, "I know." That is all she said. "I know." And she kept stirring. The guests began arriving at 7. Some of them had driven 2 hours in the dark. My father went out to the end of the lane and met them there and turned them around, one buggy at a time. And I watched him from the window doing it, and he shook every man's hand as he sent him home. Nobody came inside. Nobody asked. The tables sat there with the cloths on them until my uncles came in the afternoon and took the sawhorses down. And I want to tell you what happened the very next day, because I have never in my life been able to separate the two. The next day was Friday, the 22nd of November, 1963. The president was killed in Texas. We had no radio and no telephone in the house, so we did not hear about it until Saturday, when a neighbor's English hired man came up the lane and told my father in the barn. So the English world got a day it will never forget. And it was the day after ours. And not one person outside our lane ever knew that we had one. I want you to sit with that, because it is the whole shape of my life. The world had a wound everybody could name, and we had a wound nobody would. Now let me tell you about the 52 years in the middle, because that is the part people always skip, and it is the part that actually happened. There is a newspaper in our world called The Budget. It comes out of Sugar Creek, Ohio, and it has been running since 1890. It is not news the way you think of news. It is scribes, one from each settlement, writing in every week. Who had a baby? Who broke a leg? Who is visiting from Indiana? Who died? Threshing is finished at the Yoders. The millers had company Sunday. Every week for 52 years, I read The Budget. And I was not reading it for the news. I was reading it for one name. I read the Ohio settlements and the Indiana settlements and the Missouri ones and the little ones out in Montana that only had 4 families. I read the Florida letters from Pinecraft in the winter columns. I read them at the kitchen table after the children were down, with the lamp pulled close, and my husband never once asked me what I was looking for, because he knew, and because we did not talk about it, because that was the second rule. I did that for 2,681 weeks. I know the number because I counted them. In the drawer of my treadle sewing machine, underneath the bobbins and the oil can, there was a piece of brown paper folded in 4. And every Sunday that I sat in church and her name was not said, I made one pencil mark on it, not a tally with the line through the 5, just marks in rows, the way you would count sheep through a gate. I never told a living soul about that paper. Not my husband, not my daughters. It was the only place in the world where my sister was still being counted. And then there was the dress. Amish brides sew their own. Rebecca's was blue, not the deep navy, a lighter blue, and she had made it in September, and she had cried over the sleeves because she set them wrong twice and had to pick them out. It was hanging on the nail behind our door on the morning she was gone. She had not taken it. She had taken her shawl and her black bonnet, and we found out later, $11 from the sugar tin. And she had left the dress hanging there, because you cannot start a new life in a wedding dress. I took it down, I folded it, and I kept that dress folded in the bottom of my hope chest for 27 years. 27 years, from 1963 to 1990. And in 1990, I did something I have never forgiven myself for. And I'm going to tell you anyway, because if I only tell you the parts where I was the good sister, then this is not a story. It is a performance. In 1990, I decided she was dead. She would have been 49. There had been no word in 27 years. And I thought, I am not going to be an old woman keeping a dead girl's dress in a box. So I took it out into the good light, and I cut it up. I cut my sister's wedding dress into squares, and I pieced it into a 9-patch quilt, and I bound it in black, and I put it in the linen chest, and I did not take it out again. I want to tell you about a woman named Barbara Lapp, because this is where I stopped believing it was only my family. Barbara was 2 farms over and about 15 years older than me. In 1982, at a funeral, I was helping her carry chairs in from the shed, and neither one of us was looking at the other, which is how the real things always got said among us. She said your sister was a good hand with a garden, that is all. But she had said the sister. She had come that close to the edge. I said yes, she was. And Barbara set a chair down and she said, my brother Amos went in 49. He was 20. I have read the budget every week since, and I have never once found him. 2 women, 2 farms apart, 33 years. Both of us reading the same newspaper every Thursday night, looking for a different name, and neither of us ever knowing the other one was doing it. That is not a family being cruel. That is a system running exactly the way it was built to run. Nobody had to enforce anything. We enforced it on ourselves in the dark, at our own kitchen tables, out of love, out of obedience, and out of not having any other way to be. Barbara died in 2004. She never found Amos. I went to her funeral. 300 people came and they dug the grave themselves, and they sang for 2 hours. And I stood at the back of that crowd thinking, there is a whole second graveyard in this county, and every one of us is standing on it, and not one of us will ever say so out loud. My mother died in the winter of 2014. She was 98 years old, and she died in the Dottie house, the small house on the end where the old ones live. And she was clear in the head until about the last week. And in January, my daughters and I cleaned it out. In the bottom of her cedar trunk, underneath the good tablecloths, there was a Bible. And in the Bible, tucked in against the back cover, there was a postcard. It had a picture of a beach on the front and palm trees and the word Sarasota in orange letters. And it was postmarked Sarasota, Florida, March of 1964, 4 months after. On the back, in Rebecca's handwriting, which I would know at the bottom of the ocean, it said this, I am well. I am not coming back. Please do not tell Anna. It will only make it harder for her. Please do not tell Anna. My mother kept that postcard in her Bible for 51 years. She read it every day because that is where she kept her place. Right there in the back where the concordance is. She sat across the table from me at 4,000 meals. She watched me read that newspaper, and she honored my sister's last request to her, and she never said one word. I sat down on the floor of that little house, and I held that postcard, and I did not cry. I want to be honest. I did not cry. I felt something colder than crying. I felt 51 years go through me like a draft under a door. My granddaughter's girl, Ruth, is Mennonite. She has a telephone that is also a computer, and she has patience, and she is the one who did it. It took her 9 weeks. Sarasota was only the first place. Rebecca had been in Florida, then Ohio, then a town in western Maryland, and she had married a man named Harold in 1968, and she had gone by Becky, and that is why 52 years of reading Amish newspapers was never going to find her, because she was never in them. She was in a phone book. Ruth came to my kitchen on a Tuesday in June of 2015. I was 71 years old. She put a piece of paper on the table with an address on it, and she said, "Mammy, she is alive." We drove down on a Sunday. I hired an English driver, a woman named Donna, because that is what we do. And it was 2 hours and 40 minutes, and I did not say 6 words the whole way. I had the quilt on my lap, the black one, the 9-patch. I had gone and taken it out of the linen chest the night before, and I had it folded on my knees the entire drive, and I did not know what I was going to say about it. I still do not know why I brought it. The house was small and white, with a metal ramp going up to the porch instead of steps, and a woman came to the screen door in a wheelchair, in slacks, with short white hair, 74 years old, and she looked at me through that screen for a long time, and she said in Deutsch, after 52 years of not needing it, "Anna, du bist du, you are here." I could not speak. I could not do it. I stood on that porch like a post. And she said the thing I had been waiting my whole life to be accused of. And she did not say it as an accusation at all. She said, "I knew you were awake." And I said, "I know. I have known for 52 years. And she said, "Anna, I would not have let you come. I only asked so that somebody in that house would know I chose it." What happened over the next 11 Sundays I cannot carry in 20 minutes. There are things this recording cannot hold. The names, the counting, the drawer, the dress I kept for 27 years. 3 years ago, I wrote it all down. The book is called The Sundays. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. But I will tell you the shape of it. There were 11, from June until the middle of September, and then a gap, and then 2 more in November, and then the 12th Sunday I went down. And she was in the hospital, and she died on the 9th of December, 2015. I learned her children's names on the 2nd Sunday. There are 4 of them. I say all 4 names out loud every night before I sleep. And I have done that for 11 years now, because there were 52 years I did not know there were names to say. On the 6th Sunday, she asked me about the farm. Not about our mother, not about the church, about the farm. She wanted to know if the pear tree by the wash house was still standing. I told her it came down in a storm in 1988. She was quiet for a long moment, and then she said, "Well, that is the one thing I never thought to ask about in 52 years, and now it is the only thing I want." She told me why she went, on the fourth Sunday. It was not another man. It was not the English world. She had gone to our mother in October and said she could not marry him. And our mother had said, "It is published, Rebecca. It is published." And Rebecca said to me, sitting there in that little front room, I did not run from God. I ran toward a morning that was mine. On the 11th Sunday, driving home in the dark, Donna said something to me that I have thought about every single day since. She said, "Anna, nobody hid her. They just never told you where she was. That is not the same as a locked door, but it keeps you out just as long. A door does not have to be locked. It only has to be a door that nobody mentions. I want to be fair to my people, because I am one of them, and I will die one of them in most of the ways that matter. That community buried my father in a grave they dug with their own hands. When my husband died in 2009, there were 40 men in my fields inside of 2 days, and I did not ask for one of them. I have never in my life wondered who would come if something happened to me. Not once. Most of you cannot say that, and I know it. But there is no scripture that requires a woman to read a newspaper for 52 years. There is nothing holy in a mother carrying a postcard in her Bible until she dies of old age. And a silence that a whole family agrees to keep is still a silence somebody has to live inside. I am not old order anymore. At 73, I moved my membership to a Mennonite church a mile down the road. I did not leave angry. I left because I could not sit through one more Sunday in a room where her name was still not allowed to be said, now that I finally had it back. I did give her the quilt on the third Sunday. I put it over her knees, and I told her what it was made out of. And she ran her hand over those blue squares for a long time, and she said, "Well, it got used after all. If you grew up in a house where somebody's name went quiet, I see you. If you have ever been protected from something you had every right to know, and been told afterward that it was done out of love, I see you too. It probably was done out of love. That does not give you back the years. You are allowed to be told. You are allowed to go looking now. Tell me in the comments what stayed with you, and tell me if there is a name you are still looking for, because somebody watching this has found theirs, and they will tell you how. The Sundays, what 20 minutes cannot hold. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. The morning is yours, if you decide it is.